I know we have viewers from everywhere on the planet, right? We have viewers from Africa, South Africa, China, maybe Europe, different places. I kind of want to talk to you guys about where I grew up. I had an interesting childhood where I was born in Cameroon, West Africa, and I lived there until I was around 6, and I moved to Minnesota where I kind of grew up. Growing up in the Midwest is different because I came from Cameroon, which was like the scorching heat. We're talking about right on the equator, so we're thinking like 100, 105 to like 112 degrees Fahrenheit in terms of heat. So I was adapted to that, and I moved to St. Paul, Minnesota. In Minnesota, I lived in the inner city, and there's a lot of lessons I learned from living in the inner city. The first thing is human beings, when they're in a survival state, the worst in them comes out. If you think about us in terms of like our basic needs, we need shelter, we need food, we need survival, we need reproduction. Those are just basic human needs. When you put a bunch of people in a concentrated area and you tell them to survive and you limit the resources, you're gonna see the worst in human nature. And that's what I saw as a kid, man. Coming from Africa, when it was like the cold, walking out and like having it be October or November and like starting to see something fall from the sky. Imagine if you were born in Africa and then you come to the US and you see something cold falling from the sky. You can see how that would freak you out, right? Man, I thought that was nuts. I was freaked out. Not being able to speak English was the first problem. I only speak French. I'm from the French-speaking, the Francophone portion of Cameroon. When I got to Minnesota, I couldn't speak to anyone for the first, maybe, let's say 6 or 9 months. It took me some time to really learn English. So I would just watch. I had to walk to a rec center, which is called Jimmy Lee. And again, I couldn't speak to anyone, so I would just watch, and like I really picked up on body patterns. I was able to see someone and see that, okay, they were selling drugs. That person was a gangbanger or a drug dealer, or this person was dangerous. I knew when to cross the street. I knew when not to speak. I knew when to look down when I was walking in front of someone. I knew who was a threat to me, even as a little kid, even at 7 years old, which is crazy. And it kind of pushes me back to thinking about our natural intelligence. We have a natural know-how of human nature, of human communication, of human interaction. That's what I really saw in Minnesota, and I was able to test out. Another thing I learned is like in Cameroon, growing up in Africa, like I had a lot of freedom. I was able to move around as I pleased. I had many jobs. In Africa, when you can walk, you work. So before I would go to school, I would sell. I was like a mango salesman. I would also sell like just meats, different meats. I was really good at that. Even at 4, 5, 6 years old, I had a natural charm. I can get the old ladies to buy a pack of mangoes. Even the mangoes that were going bad, that were spoiling, they just wanted to buy from me. So that was always one of my natural skills. That's probably why I'm doing this YouTube thing, because I'm naturally just, that camera action is something I'm okay with, being in front of people. So to contrast being so free and being able to do everything and having that autonomy to move into Minnesota and really knowing that like there's certain sidewalks I couldn't walk on, there's certain times I couldn't be out at night, there's certain things I couldn't say to people, there's certain ways I couldn't look at someone even as a child because I was at the danger of falling victim to the violence that could occur there. I've had people like in classes above me that were shot at or that spent a night in juvenile detention as kids. You're thinking about 4th graders, 5th graders, 6th graders going to juvenile detention. And I'm seeing that, I'm like, wow, this is so insane. There was a certain level of ferociousness that the people in the inner city had. There was a level that they could take it that I was just so perplexed by. If you're not like tough in the hood, right, they call you a square, but man, I was a square, as square as they come. And I think that was like one of the most shaping experiences in life because I really learned the human psychology as a child without even knowing what I was learning. Because I was able to really just be alone for that first year where I couldn't speak English and not really talk to too many people, I was able to watch without an opinion, observing just to observe. And man, it was a great experience. Another thing I learned in the inner city was that some people aren't given the benefit of having a childhood, which is one of the things that is probably the biggest robbery that can be done to someone. You know, when children are discovering and they're running around and they're trying to find friends and they have no cares in the world, right? They're able to express themselves. Some adults don't think that that's an important time. I had friends that were like 11, 12 that were driving to school. They could drive to school. They were making money. There are kids in the rec center I went to that were selling drugs. So you can see how they were robbed of that childhood. They had to provide for their family. They were at home with their younger siblings and their mothers were never home or their fathers were absent. They were robbed of that childhood, that good innocence, that developmental period where you kind of bloom into the person that you're going to be. And I think that has to be one of the most tragic things that could happen to someone, but it also is like a major contributor to what you see now. People growing up and, you know, the violence in inner cities, people killing each other and people being robbed, the peace of mind that doesn't exist there. Also realize that anyone that lives in the inner city, right, if you make it out, you were supposed to. Every area on this planet has a vibe where you can see an energy or it has a theme to it. Some affluent areas, you can kind of go there and you can sense affluence, you can sense prosperity, you can sense success. Some poor areas have like a violent theme to them. You can sense murder, you can sense death, you can see danger. I'm sure if you go to a war zone, you can sense chaos and pain. The inner city is a place of pain. You can smell violence, and the people that leave there are those that can create a different environment in their minds. They see their physical environment, right? They see the murders, the robberies, the stabbings, everything that's happening, but then they also create a different environment in their imagination that they live in. So your environment isn't always physical. Your environment is your mindset. You can create a different environment in your mind. The books you read, the people that you see, the messages that are reinforced. You can make it out of any situation. You can be a goat farmer in Angola and be a billionaire, easy. You could be born in the Arctic tundra and live with the Eskimo people, and you can make it to the States and be a billionaire. If you have that mind, what you reinforce in your mind is positive and it's propelling you forward, you can make it out. So if you're a kid here watching, let's say you live in the hood, or let's say you don't live in the hood, let's say you live in an affluent area, let's say you live in a war zone, let's say you live in a place where your parents are always fighting. If you can train your mind, if you can create a new environment, if you can create mentors, which can be in the form of people in front of you, but if you don't have people near you, man, create mentors and books. Find people on YouTube that are inspirational. Read their books. Watch their YouTube. Really study them and create those friendships in your head. And I promise you, you can make it out of any condition. Growing up in Minnesota was one of the greatest things that ever happened to me because I saw the poverty line. I saw what it is when people are fighting for resources. I saw the human heart, human nature in full force, in full effect. I saw the infighting that happens. See, people say all these words, right? They say that it's white versus black, it's Asian versus Indian, it's all these different things. Within certain cultures infight. There's civil wars that exist everywhere throughout the planet. And that's what you see in the inner city. You see an anger that lives in people. Maybe it's generational. There's an anger that they feel towards the police. There's an anger that they feel towards themselves. There's an anger that they feel like they're conditioned. And that is reflected outward. And if you have enough angry people or enough people that are struggling or in certain plights, you're going to get like the highest crime rates, like what you see in Baltimore. You're going to see what you see in Chicago. You're going to see war zones. You're going to see people experiencing these things. I say that to say this. I'm grateful I was a kid in those circumstances. I'm grateful that I wasn't able to speak to too many people because I was able to observe. And if you can look at life through an observer's lens, you'll learn all the lessons you need. If you observe without judging. Let's say you have someone that walks in front of you and they spit on you, or they spit on the floor or something like that. They slam their Coke bottle or whatever. They're trying to break their phone. Instead of shaming the person and seeing them and saying, oh man, this person is a terrible person because he does X, Y, Z, just say this person came into a room, he wiped his feet on the floor, he came, he spit on the floor, he tried to break his phone, he walked out. Just observe that situation without having an opinion. There's observation, which is observing what happened, and there's like making an opinion, which is judgment. When you judge, now what he did became a part of you. You've taken that because you resented it. And now like that affects you. Now you get frustrated because you're like, man, why did that guy come in here so angry? Why was he doing X, Y, Z? Whereas if you just observed it, it just happened like a movie. Like, okay, wow, another crazy person. And it's gone. We want to hold on to as little as we can. We don't want to hold on to the emotions that people project onto us. That's what I was able to do in the inner city. But yeah, that was my experience living in Minnesota. Know that the mind is everything, man. You can train that mind. You can train your environment. You can win at life. Thank you for being here tonight. You could have been anywhere on the planet, but you were here with me. We talked some good game. Hopefully see you soon again. All right, guys, out.